So after I made that video yesterday where I was all excited that despite having lots of excuses and being tired and it being a big day and it was late, yada 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 yada, I made a video yesterday and I didn't break the chain. I was stubbornly refusing to break the chain. But maybe I should have. Maybe I should have, because half an hour later, when we were looking around for the dog and we couldn't find him, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. Opened up the garage door, sure enough, he came dashing out. So when I got in there to make that video yesterday, he must have stealthed himself in there. I didn't know he'd followed me in, so I didn't think to check when I left. And maybe if I'd been a little bit more awake and a little bit more firing on all cylinders, then it would have occurred to me to have a look around for him, or maybe would have been more perceptive, but wasn't the case. So we got the dog out, all good, but he left such a trail of destruction behind him. His nickname is Destructo, or Destroyer of Worlds. So yeah, there's a pretty good reason that he's usually not allowed in the garage when we're not there. And all my worst fears had in fact come true. First, it looks like he panicked and was trying to find a way out of the garage and knocked a heap of stuff over. And he also chewed up some stuff, I guess, after he'd given up on getting out. He just decided to keep himself busy. Trouble is, my boyfriend Alex is currently doing guitar repairs from our garage as well as it being a gym. And there was some of his customers' stuff in there, and that's what Rocket got to. And he didn't do anything particularly devastating. He just chewed up a strap on a guitar case. But nonetheless, that's now a case that that can't be given to the customer. And when I went to tell Alex that it had happened, his first response was to ask which guitar case, of course. And it turns out that one, out of everything in that room, was a special order item from the factory. So it's not something that can just easily be replaced from the store. Because of course. I was gutted. I was so gutted. I was so upset and like profusely apologetic. Oh man, I feel so terrible. That stock, the stuff that's in our garage right now, that's been entrusted to Alex to keep safe at our place, and through my negligence, I've now made an awkward situation for him and created a fire that he needs to put out, and that, doesn't make me feel good at all. But he's a wonderful, beautiful, amazing human being, and yeah, he was upset, but he didn't make a big deal of it. For him, it was, there was like an initial, like a little bit of a burst of emotion, and then he let it go. Not me though. I kept apologizing and kept asking questions, kept trying to figure out how I could make this better, how I could help. And I found it really hard to let go. Like the guilt and the shame just ate away at me all night. And then again, when I woke up this morning, I grew up in a household where my parents were not very emotionally mature and did not have a good handle on their tempers, and also their perception of what was and wasn't worthy of an emotional response was a bit skewed as well. Like they both had pretty short fuses. And yeah, sometimes it was quite volatile, and anytime I messed up, or sometimes, like in hindsight, I now understand that a lot of the times that they'd blow up at me, I wasn't being a bad person. I wasn't even being a bad kid. I was just being a kid. As a result of the household that I grew up in, I now just assume that any misstep on my behalf will always elicit that sort of response, that I'll always be on the receiving end of tsunamis of anger. And I don't like it. It's actually, it's kind of a shit thing to carry with you into adulthood. It makes me pretty useless in confrontations and conflicts. I tend to just absolutely shut down, and at worst, I can start crying at the drop of a hat if it's a particularly tense scenario, or if it's caught me completely by surprise. I've done a lot of customer service work in my day, and not exactly the most convenient trait to have. Anyway, Alex was absolutely wonderful about it, and it just kind of struck me. It always surprises me so much when people do not blow up at something that I feel was an egregious error on my behalf. And it probably shouldn't, because honestly, I've been making such an intentional effort over the last few years, ever since I got into understanding about conditioning. I've made such a conscious effort to not react like that when things like that happen to me. And I'm really good now at, if anything happens to my material possessions or even any just sort of inconveniences, I'm really good at maybe having that immediate response, but really quickly bringing it down and understanding that on the grand scheme of things, it's not anything. Like, for example, actually just yesterday morning, Alex had done a whole load of washing. Some of my stuff was in there. He threw it all into the dryer indiscriminately, and one of my new tops had shrunk to the point that I can't wear it anymore. And he felt bad about that, but I didn't mind. I had to laugh about how my top now looked like a boob tube, and I had to laugh about how this is where things go in the dryer, and then we moved on. It wasn't anything. And so I shouldn't have been super duper shocked later that evening when I made a mistake and Alex didn't lose his mind over it and go into Hulk mode. I shouldn't be joking about that, should I? It's really on PC. Yeah, I shouldn't have been surprised, and yet it catches me off guard, because my instincts tell me that if I do something that inconveniences someone else, it's going to bring about their wrath. That's what my instincts tell me, because that's what I've been exposed to that's what I was exposed to for the entirety of my formative years. That's the evidence that I received, and yeah, overwhelmingly. It's nice to have a partner who is helping me rewrite that programming and helping me not expect that sort of response. It's like I'm waiting, because the level of guilt and shame that I feel when I inconvenience someone, it is astronomical. So I always assume that someone is going to reflect the same intensity of anger back at me, like the extent to which I feel the guilt and the shame, someone's going to project that level of anger. It's not the case with Alex, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. It's taking me a lot of getting used to, and I don't mess up. I don't make a habit of messing up that often, right? So it's not something I get exposed to particularly often. So it is always a whole new experience every time it happens, and a whole new thing to wrap my head around. This little rant went in a direction I didn't really anticipate it to go, and I don't have a closing sentiment to wrap that up nicely. I guess there's something in this about rewriting your stories, and yeah, if you grew up thinking something was one way, then and that's not serving you, then perhaps it is worthwhile looking for evidence to the contrary. Nope. I don't have any way to finish this. And I probably should start figuring it out, because I'm doing pretty good at this not breaking the chain thing. We passed a week yesterday. Today's day 8. I'll probably start talking about some of the more juicy kind of topics at some point soon. What's she gonna talk about? We'll find out, but I gotta figure out how to end these things. Maybe before the next video, I will just practice endings. Maybe the next video can just be a video of endings. I think that's a great idea. I think tomorrow I'm just gonna practice every single ending again, and it'll just be a medley of me saying goodbye. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yep. Yep.